interesting to know if they're going to look at that first one for a flagrant foul. There was an impact, but there wasn't wind-up or follow-through, but there was...
June 17th wasn't just another line on the calendar. It wasn't just a game to check off the schedule. No, this was a war that had been quietly brewing, and the Indiana Fever came in with a score to settle. The lights were bright, the crowd loud, but the tension? It was suffocating. Caitlin Clark was back on the court after missing time with a quad injury, and her presence alone changed the atmosphere. But this game wasn't just about her comeback, it was about revenge, about what happened on May 30th when her teammates were hurt and nothing was done about it. This game had emotion, fire, and a target, and that target wore a Connecticut Sun jersey. For Indiana, this wasn't about standings or stats, it was about sending a message. You don't mess with our team and walk away without consequences. From the opening tip, you could feel it. Every dribble, every screen, every stare had extra weight. And when you add history, pain, and rivalry to a matchup, you don't get basketball, you get a battle. Let's rewind. May 30th, a night that will go down in Indiana Fever history not because of the score, but because of the pain. Sophie Cunningham and Sydney Colson both left that game injured, and the league barely blinked. 2 players taken out, and not just by chance. Both injuries were contact-heavy, both suspicious, and both involved one player, Jacy Sheldon. Sophie Cunningham took a hit that left her with a badly twisted ankle and even knocked out part of her front tooth. If that wasn't enough, Sydney Colson's injury was even more alarming. Her leg got tangled and twisted after Sheldon landed directly on it during a scramble. And what did the refs do? Nothing. No flagrant, no technical, just a shrug. Imagine being a teammate on the bench watching this unfold. Your sisters in the game are falling left and right, and the person responsible? Still on the court, playing hard like nothing happened. That wasn't basketball. That was a failure of accountability. The Fever remembered, and they waited. Because June 17th was circled on every Indiana player's calendar, and they weren't just looking for a win. Before they ever met in the pros, Caitlin Clark and Jacy Sheldon had history. This wasn't their first dance. Back in college, during those fiery Big Ten battles between Iowa and Ohio State, Sheldon made it her mission to become Clark's shadow and her biggest headache. She wasn't just defending, she was antagonizing. Every game was physical. Every possession had trash talk. Sheldon bumped, pushed, and poked, always looking to throw Clark off her rhythm. But Clark never forgot. That fire never died. And now, years later, they were both in the WNBA, older, stronger, and still battling. Only now, the stakes were even higher. Injuries, egos, and entire fan bases were involved. This wasn't about a college rivalry anymore. This was about pride, protection, and unfinished business. So when Clark looked across the court on June 17th and saw Sheldon once again, she didn't just see a defender. She saw the player who had hurt her teammates. She saw her past, her pain, and her payback. And you better believe, she was ready. It all changed in a flash. Midway through the game, Sheldon approached Clark on defense. What happened next wasn't subtle. As she reached in for a supposed steal, her finger jabbed directly into Clark's eye. Clark's head jerked back. She grabbed her face, stumbled, and for a second, everything stopped. The crowd went silent, then erupted in outrage. The cameras caught it. The replay confirmed it. This was no brush, it was a direct hit to the eye, violent and reckless. Clark tried to shake it off, squinting in pain, her vision blurry, but the damage wasn't just physical. This was a reminder that she was being hunted, that the aggression from May 30th hadn't ended. It had escalated. It wasn't just a foul, it was a message. You're not safe either. But what the Connecticut Sun didn't realize was, Caitlin Clark never plays scared. And this hit, it woke up a competitor who was already boiling. You poke someone in the eye. What do you expect them to do? Smile? Say thank you? No. You expect them to react, and that's exactly what Caitlin Clark did. Fueled by frustration and pain, she shoved Sheldon back. It wasn't excessive, it wasn't theatrical, it was real. A message of her own: back off. But instead of protecting Clark, the refs blew the whistle and hit her with a technical foul. For pushing back after getting poked in the eye, the crowd couldn't believe it. The bench exploded. Even neutral fans watching on TV were stunned. This wasn't just a missed call, it was a total failure of justice. Clark was penalized for defending herself, while the instigator walked away again. It sent the worst possible message to players across the league. If you stand up for yourself, you get punished. And once that tech was handed out, the Fever and the fans knew this wasn't going to end quietly. Just when things couldn't get more tense, Marina Mabrey stepped into the spotlight and made it worse. With Clark already dealing with an eye injury and frustration from the tech, Mabrey delivered the most reckless move of the night. She threw her body into Clark. Hard. It was less basketball and more football. Clark hit the floor. Hard. The arena gasped. Fans pointed to the replay boards. Clark clutched her body, stunned. This wasn't a play. It was a cheap shot, a statement of dominance gone too far. And yet, the whistle barely blew. Once again, the refs issued another weak technical. That's it. No ejection, no flagrant, just a slap on the wrist. And the message was clear. Indiana would get no protection tonight, but the Fever weren't going to beg for help. They were about to deliver payback, the kind you don't forget. The air was electric, but after Caitlin Clark hit the ground from Marina Mabrey's body check, it was like the entire arena forgot how to breathe. You could hear the crowd gasp. People stood up in the stands, mouths open, fingers pointing at the giant screen replaying the hit in slow motion. You didn't need commentary. The video said it all. But then, silence from the officials. No flagrant, no ejection, just another technical. The same kind Clark had just received for a natural reaction after getting jabbed in the eye. The message being sent? Loud and clear. We're not protecting you. It wasn't just Clark's teammates who noticed. It was every fan, every analyst, every opposing player watching from home. If the league's officials weren't going to stand up for the league's most visible rookie, someone else was going to have to. And that someone was already sitting on the bench, waiting for the perfect moment. Head coach Stephanie White had seen enough. She's not one to explode on the sidelines, but this time she was furious. Standing up, shouting across the court, pointing at the officials, she wasn't asking for a favor. She was demanding fairness. She had watched her team get injured on May 30th. She had seen Caitlin Clark get targeted more than once. And now, in front of her home crowd, she had watched her star player get slammed to the hardwood with no real consequence. It wasn't just anger, it was disbelief. In the post-game press conference, White didn't hold back. She called out the officiating, the repeated lack of control, the growing list of accidental contact injuries. She didn't just speak for Indiana. She spoke for every WNBA player tired of being told to tough it out while the refs looked the other way. And you could hear it in her voice. She was done staying quiet. Basketball has rules, but there's an unwritten one that matters just as much. You protect your teammate. And no one lives by that rule more fiercely than Sophie Cunningham. She wasn't even on the court during the eye poke or the body check, but she saw it all from the bench, teeth clenched, heart pounding. Sophie hadn't forgotten May 30th. She hadn't forgotten the pain, the silence, the fact that Jacy Sheldon was the reason she missed games. And now Sheldon had gone after Clark? No whistle was going to fix that. No fine, no post-game statement. For Sophie, justice wasn't something you waited for. It was something you delivered. And in the final minutes of the game, with the Fever up big and the clock winding down, Sophie finally saw her opening. The score? 87-70. The Fever were winning. The game was in the bag. But this wasn't about the score anymore. With seconds left, Jacy Sheldon went for a fast break. All eyes were on her, and right behind her came Sophie Cunningham. The crowd leaned in, they felt it. Sophie wasn't just sprinting to block the shot, she was chasing justice. Then it happened. Sheldon leapt for a layup, and Sophie wrapped her up mid-air, grabbing her body and bringing her to the ground in a hard, deliberate foul. She didn't throw a punch, she didn't slam her, but she made sure Sheldon knew. This is for May 30th. This is for Caitlin Clark. This is for all of us. It was bold, it was loud, and it was exactly what the Fever needed. The refs didn't hesitate. Sophie Cunningham was hit with a flagrant 2 and immediately ejected. Lindsay Allen and Jacy Sheldon were tossed too as the court erupted into chaos. Both benches emptied, players ran over to break up the scuffle. The crowd went into full roar. It wasn't just a foul, it was a statement. A statement that said, if the league won't protect us, we'll protect ourselves. And the best part? Sophie never looked scared. She walked off the court with her head high, the crowd chanting her name. Sophie! Sophie! She didn't do it to hurt Sheldon. She did it to remind the WNBA that actions have consequences, and the Fever don't forget. The final score was 88-71, a blowout. But this win, it was about so much more than numbers. Caitlin Clark finished with 20 points and 6 assists, but more importantly, she stood tall after being targeted twice. Natasha Howard racked up her 50th career double-double. Kelsey Mitchell added 17 points. It was a total team effort. But everyone knew the game wasn't remembered for the stats. It was remembered for the fight, for the unity, for the moment Sophie Cunningham made the entire WNBA pay attention. And with that final buzzer, Indiana didn't just win the game, they took back their power. As the referees tried to restore order, the crowd wasn't having it. Boos rained down. Fans stood on their feet, fists in the air, chanting Sophie's name like she was the main event in a prize fight. This wasn't just support. This was a city rallying behind a hero. And Sophie? She didn't flinch. She didn't hang her head. She walked off with the same energy she walked on with, fierce, unbothered, and proud. She had done what every fan wanted, what every teammate needed, and, most importantly, what every underdog dreams of doing. She stood on business. In that moment, it didn't matter what the refs thought. It didn't matter what fines came later. To Indiana fans, Sophie Cunningham wasn't just a player. She was a warrior. And the echo of her name through that stadium was louder than any whistle. Social media exploded. Clips of the eye poke, the body check, Sophie's foul. They were all over TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Fans and analysts couldn't stop talking. Some called it dirty, others called it overdue justice. But everyone agreed on one thing: Indiana Fever weren't going to be pushed around anymore. For weeks, commentators had said Caitlin Clark wasn't being protected, that physical play against her was getting out of control. But this time, she had someone in her corner. Someone who wasn't afraid to risk ejection for the bigger message. Even rival teams were watching closely, because Sophie's flagrant wasn't just for Jacy Sheldon. It was a reminder to the rest of the WNBA. If you come for Caitlin Clark, you better be ready for what comes next. Caitlin Clark versus Jacy Sheldon wasn't just a rivalry anymore. It had become the center of a full-blown WNBA feud. College beef, professional revenge, highlight reels filled with elbows, scratches, and stare-downs. This was no longer just about two players. It was two teams, two mentalities. Indiana, the rising stars refusing to be bullied. Connecticut, the established force that played physical and unapologetic. Every future game between these two now must-watch TV. And the league knows it. The ratings don't lie, people love drama, and this one has everything. Heroes, villains, revenge, pain, and loyalty. And at the center of it all, a rookie who refuses to stay silent, and a teammate who proved she'd go to war for her. Let's be honest, Sophie Cunningham didn't foul Sheldon to be reckless. She did it to send a message the refs had failed to deliver. She didn't aim to injure, she didn't lose control. It was precise, calculated, intentional. She lined Sheldon up, bear hugged her mid-air, and brought her down with just enough force to say, "We remember what you did," without crossing the line into real harm. It was old-school basketball justice, the kind that says, "We take care of our own." And in a league that's increasingly physical, where officials often miss the line between tough and dirty, Sophie's act became something bigger. Not just a foul, not just revenge, it was protection. And the entire league was watching. After all the chaos, all the fouls, all the controversy, Caitlin Clark remained calm. That's what made it even more powerful. She didn't throw punches, she didn't scream, she played, she scored, she kept her cool. Even after getting eye-poked, even after getting body-checked, even after getting hit with a bogus technical, she responded the only way she knows how, with buckets. That poise, that composure, that's what separates her from the rest. She let her teammate handle the justice, and then she went back to leading her team to a win. Clark isn't just a player, she's becoming a symbol. For grit, for grace, for never backing down. And the WNBA is starting to realize she's not just good for the game, she's changing it. It wasn't just about Clark, or Sophie, or the fans. This was about the Fever as a unit. This game showed who they are at their core, a team that refuses to be disrespected. They played hard, they played fast, and when it came down to protecting their own, they did what was necessary. Kelsey Mitchell, Natasha Howard, Aaliyah Boston, they all stepped up, not just on the scoreboard, but in presence, in spirit. This wasn't a win in the standings, it was a win in the culture, a shift. The kind of game that makes the rest of the league say, "Okay, Indiana's not soft anymore." And that's exactly what they wanted. Let's not forget, Caitlin Clark didn't just survive this game, she dominated it. Even with her eye hurting, even after getting slammed, she still dropped 20 points, she still dished out 6 assists, and she still ran the floor with the same fire that made her a legend in college. Every possession, she pulled defenders, stretched the floor, and created chaos, even without saying a word. And every time she got knocked down, she got back up stronger. That's the part people miss. Caitlin Clark isn't just a highlight machine. She's tough, mentally and physically. And this game, this was her proof of that. Then there's Sophie. She wasn't on the highlight reels before the game. She wasn't trending on social media. But by the end, she became the story. Sophie didn't forget May 30th. She didn't forget who hurt her. She didn't forget what Sheldon did to Caitlin. So with the game already won and the clock ticking down, she saw her chance and took it. She didn't throw a punch. She didn't go wild. She sent a message, loud and clear. That flagrant 2 wasn't out of control. It was calculated, controlled, purposeful. The type of foul that says you went too far and we didn't forget. Fans rose to their feet. Spicy Sophie started trending, and in that moment, she became more than a teammate. She became a protector. Indiana didn't just win 88-71, they won back their pride. They reminded the league what happens when you push too far, when you think you can bully a team with no consequences. Caitlin Clark showed heart, Sophie Cunningham showed fire, and the entire Fever roster stood together like a unit that refuses to break. This wasn't just revenge, it was a warning. So the next time anyone thinks about cheap-shotting a Fever player, just remember June 17th. Because now the whole league knows. You mess with one, you answer to all.